Hello friends, today we are going to learn about SSL proxy profile in Datapower. So you are aware that you have 5 top level services inside the Datapower. They are shown over here: Web Services Proxy, Multi-Protocol Gateway, XML Firewall, and 2 others as well. Whenever these top-level objects are required to talk on over an SSL layer, you need to have an SSL proxy profile configured in the Datapower, and also that SSL proxy profile needs to be attached at appropriate place inside these objects. For example, suppose you have created a web services proxy and you want your client to be over HTTPS. In that case, an SSL proxy profile needs to be created, and that needs to be attached to the web services proxy so that SSL negotiation and other related activities can be performed by this object. So SSL proxy profile is key thing that you need to configure while dealing with any kind of SSL related activities in the Datapower. So today we are going to see how to create an SSL proxy profile. But before we move on, let's go to the SSL proxy profile and see what are the components over here. So I'm typing SSL proxy profile. There are a couple of proxy profiles already configured over here, so I will go ahead and click one of them and let you know what are the parameters there and what to configure and what not to configure. I mean which one to keep as a default. So if we look at SSL scenario, Datapower can act in a 3-way. The first is that objects on the Datapower as acting as a SSL server. So for example, if you have a web services proxy and if you want your client to connect over HTTPS, you will tell them that, hey, this is the IP and this is the port address, and use the protocol like HTTPS, IP and port, and extract the WSDL. And once you have that WSDL, the endpoint is also on HTTPS. In this scenario, Datapower is acting as a HTTPS server. Now, a reverse case is also possible. Suppose you are in a Datapower and you want to connect to a backend server which is on HTTPS. In this scenario, Datapower is acting as a HTTPS client or SSL client. This scenario, I give you an example. A typical scenario in which Datapower is acting as a SSL client is when you need to synchronize with a WSRR server which is which is working on HTTPS. In that case, the objects which are on Datapower are acting as a SSL client. There could be other scenarios as well in which two-way communication is required, and Datapower is acting both as an SSL server and SSL client. Typical use case of that, I would say, is when you are negotiating with the ADFS. So when you are connecting to the ADFS, you are connecting over HTTPS. So ADFS is something which will provide you a certificate. So you need to validate that certificate. In this scenario, Datapower is acting as a SSL client, but at the same time, the ADFS may also require from you certificate so as to validate you. This is called certificate based authentication. In that case, Datapower needs to supply the certificate. But how? This is called two-way SSL. So Datapower has capabilities in which it can work as a client, SSL client, it can work as a SSL server, and it can work in both ways as well. So these all configurations are done in SSL profile, and we are on SSL profile. So let's see where these things are where these things are created. I will walk you through one simple scenario in which Datapower is acting as a SSL server, and building upon that, we will see how to create, where to specify configuration if we want Datapower to act as a SSL client, or in another case we want Datapower to act as a both SSL client and server, that is called two-way SSL. So we are on a Datapower proxy profile. If you create a proxy profile, let me explain it to you over here. So the first thing that you need to provide is the SSL proxy profile name. So let me go to here as the SSL proxy profile, and let me create one thing. Add. Yeah. So now we are here. The first thing that you need to provide is a proper name for SSL proxy profile. We can call it like test SSL profile. The second thing that you need to configure is SSL direction. So SSL direction, here it is, a forward, reverse, two-way. Forward direction means you want Datapower to act as a SSL client. Reverse means you want Datapower to act as a SSL server, and two-way means it is a two-way SSL. So you can get the help information over here. Forward means the proxy acts as SSL client. Reverse means proxy acts as SSL server, and two-way means proxy acts both as SSL client and SSL server. So let us assume that we are creating an SSL proxy profile which will be used in object such that Datapower is expected to act as a SSL server. So SSL direction should be reverse. Yeah, SSL direction should be reverse because proxy acts as SSL server. Now, since you have configured it, we will need to create, and you can see that if I select forward, the options change accordingly. So this is a beautiful thing with the Datapower GUI. So I have selected reverse. Now I will select a reverse crypto profile. What is this reverse crypto profile? So let's understand that you want Datapower to act as a SSL server. In that case, you will need two things. The first thing is you need a certificate which will be presented to your clients when SSL negotiation is taking place. The second thing is that you need to have your private key so that you can participate in SSL negotiation and act as a SSL server. All those things are configured in the reverse crypto profile. So reverse crypto profile is the top level object which encapsulates both the certificate as well as the associated private key. So let's go ahead and create a reverse crypto profile. I'm here, I'm creating a test reverse crypto profile. Now, what are these? Identification credential and validation credential. See, identification credential is a top level object which you need to configure when you expect this object to act as a server. So for example, right now our main objective is to configure an object which will act like a SSL server. So we will configure identification credential. If you want Datapower object to act like a SSL client, you will configure validation credential. So if you go ahead and see identification credential, I have one created already for you, and I will click on it to show you what are the parameters that we need to configure. So we need to configure a crypto key, which is basically a private key. We need to configure a certificate. Yes, this is the certificate which will be presented to the clients. And if there are intermediate certificates as well, for example, in the case of most of the certificates issued by a trusted authority, or you can say trust anchor, then you need to configure the intermediate CA certificate. In most cases, if you omit configuring the intermediate CA certificate, things would work fine. But for some of the trust anchors, for example, Thwate, it is more desirable that you configure the intermediate CA certificate as well. So this is about creating a crypto identification credential. So once you have that identification credential, you need not configure the validation credential. But remember, if had we configuring this as a two-way SSL proxy, then we need to have a validation credential as well. But right now, since our intent is to create a proxy which acts as a SSL server, then we need not configure the validation credential. There are ciphers. I think you need not touch this in all usual cases. Options are all available, so we usually keep it as a default. And let's click apply. So you have a reverse crypto profile created. Server-side caching is on. So these all parameters are some value add over certificate and key material that you configure. So the typical idea is that whenever a server, whenever we see something as an SSL server, we want to configure a certificate and associated private key with that server. That's true, but that is very bare bone. On top of that, when SSL negotiation is happening, there are a lot of parameters that can affect SSL negotiation as well as SSL performance. So if you look at the Datapower, the objects which we configure are typically configured in such a way that they provide overall value add over the mere bare bone of certificate and the key material. So for example, if I go ahead and click it, you will see that I not only I have configured certificate and key material over here, but apart from that, cipher suite and what SSL versions are enabled are a value added things which have been created on top of the certificate as well as key material, so that efficient SSL negotiation can take place. That's why we typically seldom use files which are uploaded on Datapower in a direct way. We typically encapsulate them inside objects. The objects are intended to provide more value add over the bare bone files which you have uploaded on the Datapower appliance. So you have configured the reverse crypto profile. Server-side caching is on, and we typically do not touch these parameters until and unless there is a specific need for tweaking these. So you have now configured a SSL proxy profile. You should click apply and your object is up. Remember, this crypto profile is only useful in objects in which you want Datapower to act as a SSL server. So this is all about SSL proxy profile. Suppose we have created a forward crypto profile. In that case, we want Datapower to act as a SSL client. Now, when you are acting as a SSL client, so consider a typical case in which your browser is acting as a SSL client. What do? Your browser typically gets a certificate from a target server when SSL negotiation is happening. And once you get a certificate, your browser needs to validate whether the certificate is valid or not. In other sense, in other way, basically, we can say that your browser needs to trust the certificate which is shown to you by the target server. So your browser needs to trust. Your browser has a set of trust anchors that are pre-configured, that comes pre-configured with your browser, and whenever a certificate is presented, you first check whether the certificate is being issued by that particular trust anchor or not. So if, for example, if I go ahead in Mozilla and I go to tools and I go to options and I go to advanced and view certificates, you can see trust anchors configured over here. They are possibly 80 or so, right? So if any of the certificate which you get as part of SSL negotiation are issued by these trust anchors, then your certificate is something which your browser could could trust, but it does not mean that it will trust, it could trust. Similarly, when we are dealing with data power, there is no default trusted certificate. So if you want to connect with a server which is SSL enabled, the first thing that you need to do is that acquire its certificate and upload its certificate inside the data power and create a certificate object. By creating a certificate object, you are basically trusting that particular certificate. So for example, if I go ahead and say https irctc.co.in, yeah, so there is a certificate issued to this organization, and that certificate is issued by GeoTrust. That's fine. But if I go ahead and try to build a connection with this site using Datapower, by default Datapower will not allow. So what I need to do, I need to basically export this certificate as a file and then import it inside the Datapower, and then create a forward crypto, you can say create a certificate object, and afterwards create a forward crypto profile in order to trust that certificate. So this is a typical scenario in which forward crypto profile is used. Another scenario is that you need to connect with the backside WSRR server, for example, or ADFS server, but ADFS case is more suitable as a use case for two-way SSL negotiation. So I'm not taking that over here. So forward crypto profile is something which so there are many forward crypto profile created over here, and I will say that I select one and I will show you how this thing has been created. So to create a forward crypto profile, all we need to is a certificate object, and once you have that certificate object created inside the Datapower, you can use this validation credential and basically see, I have clicked the validation credential, and the only thing that is configured over is the certificate. So this is the certificate which you need to configure over here. Apart from it, there are other value added parameters, as I said earlier. And once you configure the certificate, you have that validation credential ready. And once you have that validation credential ready, then you are done with creating a forward crypto profile. So this is how a forward crypto profile is created. Two-way, when you need to create a two-way crypto profile, you can see that both the options came over here. You need to configure the forward crypto profile, and you need to create the reverse crypto profile. So this is basically a union of both the cases which we just talked about. So this is how typically SSL. Yeah, give me a moment. Yeah, so this is how SSL proxy profiles are created in the Datapower. Now the next thing is that where to associate that SSL proxy profile. So for example, consider a case in which Datapower is acting as SSL server. So we need to configure the SSL proxy profile. So where do we configure that? Let me show you how. Where? So whenever you are creating a SSL proxy profile, or you intend that Datapower should act as a SSL server, you must be creating some top level service object. So for example, you must be creating for example a web service proxy which you intend to be on the HTTPS. So if I go ahead and if I take it one of them, you will see that for any web service there is one handler which is called which you can call it as a HTTPS handler. So the place where you attach this crypto profile is the HTTPS handler. HTTPS handler is a typical place. There are other places to attach them as well, and that differs from top level object to top level object. For example, if you are in web services proxy and you want your client to be on HTTPS, then you configure it, or you configure an HTTPS handler, and the moment you configure an HTTPS handler, it will ask you for a SSL proxy profile. So you can attach the SSL proxy profile, and once you attach the SSL proxy profile, it will kickstart working. So that's how SSL proxy profiles are used inside the Datapower. So that's all for SSL proxy profile. If you have questions, you can directly comment on my video. In my next video, I'm going to explore more about other services as well, and I'm going to show you how to use SSL proxy profile in when Datapower is acting as a HTTPS server, or Datapower is acting as a HTTPS client, or Datapower is acting in a two-way client. But this is all for this video. Thanks for watching. This is Ajit.